Welcome to the start of your expedition with Lindblad and National Geographic. We're setting out here from the Falklands on board National Geographic Explorer. We're starting the first couple of days of this expedition in the Falklands, an amazing place for wildlife. So we're going to see sheep and cattle mixed in with penguins, and we've got the green vegetation, no snow, no mountainous peaks, and it's still a place where people live, farm and make a living. After we leave the Falklands, we're heading out to South Georgia. South Georgia's been described as the Serengeti of the Southern Ocean, a slice of the Alps dropped into the Southern Ocean, packed with wildlife, fur seals, king penguin colony, a lot of elephant seals still on the beach, so there's something for everybody. From South Georgia we're going to head off down towards the ice. For me, getting down to the Antarctic early season is the best time. Some places we go we won't even come across other people's footsteps. So hopefully we'll get into the Weddell Sea where we get the chance to come across some of the big tabular icebergs.
Having worked down here as an ecologist for 40 odd years, I think the striking thing is how complex and rich life is. The impression one gets of a place like South Georgia is just the overwhelming richness of life. When we come to the Antarctic, we have a huge open landscape with almost nothing in it. But I think the dominant thing we all take away, having visited, is just how special it is and how important it is to make sure it's here for future generations.
The three destinations give people a great overview of what the South Atlantic and the Southern Ocean's got to offer. Everybody on board's looking forward to sharing this adventure with you, and we're going to have a wonderful experience. And once again, welcome on board National Geographic Explorer for your expedition Falklands, South Georgia and Antarctica.
So this is our first morning in the Falkland Islands, and this is probably the best encounter that we'll have with large colonies of black-browed albatross. About 19,000 pairs come to Saunders Island every single year to breed, and the Falkland Islands is actually home to 60% of the world's population of black-browed albatross. They're the smallest family of albatross, so wingspans of 2 to 2.5 meters. And they have this absolutely stunning eyeliner that trails off behind the eye. Other characteristic traits of this family are they have very long life expectancies. They're monogamous, so they will breed with the same partner throughout their lifespan. And they have very long breeding seasons. The black-browed albatross will return every single year to the same colonies and to the same nests. As we look throughout the colonies, we're still quite early into the breeding season. The first bird arrived to the colonies early October. But as you can see, there's still birds courting, still building nests as well. They'll lay just one egg, and those birds will be sat on eggs by now, in about 7 months' time. The chicks, when they fledge, they will take to the high seas, learning how to control a 2.5 meter wingspan and then how to find food on the high seas. It's probably pushing on 10 years before they're going to return to the colony as breeding adults. Saunders Island is also home to a huge number of penguins. There's about 30,000 penguins that breed on this island. A substantial amount of them are rockhopper penguins.
at them. Oh, they're so cute. They're following you leader.
The rockhoppers belong to a family of penguins called the crested penguins because they have these ridiculous hairstyles, these yellow quiffs that stick up, and also they're quite hardy birds, so the name kind of gives it away. They get smashed onto shore and then they climb these cliffs. So a penguin is not something you associate with climbing, but they've got incredibly strong feet, strong claws, and very powerful jump, which allows them to climb these cliffs and get to their colony. It's very early in the breeding season for them, so many of the rockhoppers we'll see just sat on one egg. They'll lay a second larger egg. The larger egg is what they'll invest most time in, and that first egg they'll actually kick out of the nest. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means that the rockhopper penguins can invest all their time in just one chick.
It's amazing that we are probably more in awe and excited about the whole thing than they are. I think they're rather bored with us. It is incredible that we can get this close to nature and be part of it. I could stand here all day and watch what's going on. I just feel blessed to be here and share this beautiful part of the world with other good friends.
The National Geographic Explorer has dropped its hook in Committee Bay, here off the island of Keppel. And we are visiting a historic site in that in 1853, the South American Mission Society decided to bring some native people from Tierra del Fuego to the Falklands. Over the history of this Mission Society presence, there were over 150 native people from Tierra del Fuego who came, were Christianized, and eventually returned to South America. And they lived here for over 40 years. There were about 150 individuals. These stone buildings that you see date back to the 1850s. This stone building was the chapel. So you'll see on top of the door here, see the face there? And it says SAMS, South American Mission Society. And this later became a wool shed where they would shear the sheep, so that was added on to the chapel. This building is pretty unique because you see the fireplace there? Well, it had 4 walls branching out, so every room had a fireplace. And that's a fairly ingenious design.
Oh, wow. Like coconut.
They were big into farming here, and they did quite well growing potatoes and berries to provide income for the society in South America. And eventually it faded out. So Keppel Island provides us a bit of a slice of life, of rural life in the Falklands. Today there are 3,200 people who live on the Falkland Islands, the bulk of them living in Stanley. So the 700 other islands are very sparsely populated.
Gentoo penguins are the 3rd largest penguin species. The first species of brushtail penguins that we get to see on our trip. And here at Bull Point, we'll see a colony of about 2,000 breeding pairs. Unlike the crested penguins that we saw yesterday, the brushtail penguins don't have this ornament on their heads. They have orange beaks and orange feet and a brushtail. And we will see the Gentoo penguins here at Bull Point incubating their eggs. They're lying down on the nest and protect the eggs from the cold and from predators. And penguin parents do a very good job protecting the egg and the chick against the cold, which is of course especially important in the areas that we're visiting now. And part of what penguins do in general is that one partner always stays in the colony with the egg or the chick, protecting it, and the other partner goes foraging at sea and comes back feeding the chick.
Well, we're here at the Gentoo penguin colony, and as you can see, they're all nesting on this sandy mound. But what we just witnessed was a skua coming in. We witnessed predation. The Gentoos didn't seem to protect the egg. They moved off the egg for a second, and the skua came in, grabbed the egg, and then broke the egg and has been eating it, which is always difficult to see. It's a photo event. It's the type of photo that you want to document for behavior, but we never seem to hang them on our wall. So this is a great example, witnessing this predation of just how delicate the life balance is and how tough these birds have to be to lay their eggs and protect the young. And sometimes it doesn't work out that well.
South Georgia is a very mountainous island with its snow-capped peaks, glaciers that come down to the sea. And it's like a slice of the Alps that's been chopped off, picked up and dropped in the ocean out here. And these towering peaks just come up out of the ocean, incredibly rugged. There's no other islands near South Georgia.
This is our first landing on the mainland of South Georgia in typical South Georgia weather, low cloud and rain. We've landed on a small fur seal beach, and that's very typical of this part of South Georgia. Everywhere where there is a sheltered beach will be covered in fur seals. At the same time, we've got all of these wonderful albatrosses flying past us, giving us really great views. We've got grey-headed albatross just down on the cliff edge. We've got light-mantled albatrosses flying past.
Albatross are the largest seabirds. Their wingspan is just 2.5 meters, but that is still larger than just about every other seabird that you'll encounter on the high seas. So adapted are they for life on the high seas, and they thrive in strong winds. They're absolutely majestic, incredible birds that we're privileged to encounter with.
Tonight after dinner we get to see our first big king penguin colony at Salisbury Plain, and what we get to see is about 250,000 king penguins, about 60,000 breeding pairs at this colony. This is not just a king penguin colony, it's one of the largest king penguin colonies there is on this planet. What we're getting to see right now are chicks, or so-called oakum boys, because of their brownish color, that are between 12 to 13 months old and ready to molt into their juvenile waterproof plumage and go to the first time at sea. And we also see adults that return from sea, either to still feed those chicks, but mostly to start the new breeding cycle. So what we get to see are trios, which are 3 adults, usually 2 males, 1 female, that are parading together. And it's all about mate choice, finding the right mate for this next upcoming breeding season. King penguins have a sort of call repertoire, and they do have a mutual display call, which they produce when they're trying to find a partner. During that time, the male will learn the female call and the female will learn the male call, because the calls are individually distinct and the signature of each bird. No bird has the same call. And you hear males, you hear females, you hear chicks whistling, and to me it's almost like learning an alien's language. So this is a really overwhelming sight, because you get to see so many king penguins. You get to take in the smell, all the sounds. You have so many penguins vocalizing at the same time. It's totally fascinating.
Gold Harbor is one of the best places to see elephant seals. About 6,000 animals at the peak of season. So the beach is literally covered with elephant seals at this point. And everywhere you look on the beach, elephant seal drama is playing out right now. We are in the peak of breeding season. Males have come ashore in August. The females started showing up sometime in September, early October. They gave birth to their pup. They're going to wean that pup after 23 days on average of nursing the pup. Fighting amongst males for the right to females is happening. They're protecting their harem, their females. And then the mating starts. And it's all here, all in front of us. Excitement everywhere here on the beach.
This is just unbelievable. Words can't describe what you see when you get off the Zodiac onto the black sand, and there are all these huge seals, and then further along are thousands of penguins. And then the landscape is just so spectacular with the glaciers and the mountains. It's truly just spectacular.
So the thing that nobody can help but fall in love with are weaned pups, the weaners. Mom has given them 23 days of milk. She's fattened them up. They look like stuffed ticks. She's never taken them to the water. She's never shown them how to be an elephant seal. And then she left. She's left them with 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks worth of reserves to figure it all out. And at first, they're kind of happy-go-lucky. They're gathering in the river. They're playing, they're mock fighting. They're hanging out with each other. But hunger will eventually drive them out to sea, where they'll leave and go for thousands of kilometers away from here to be an elephant seal. So everybody falls in love with the little tiny babies with beautiful big eyes. Oh, they're so soulful, they're looking up into you. And they are just curious about everything. So when we put the life jacket bags down, when we put our gear down, they come over to check it out. They lay on it, they roll on it, they roll in it, whether it's a camera or a tripod or a Pelican box or a life jacket bag. They want to come over and nuzzle it. They want to come over and play with it. For literally hundreds of elephant seal pups. They're babes who've been left unattended.
Goof. What you doing?
If you look across the beaches, you'll see lots of younger, smaller males trying to sneak up and mate with outlying females. But if they're unlucky enough to get caught by the beach masters, then often a fight will follow. They will do absolutely everything to not have a fight, so you'll hear this bellowing. And this bellowing is proportional to the size of the animal. And so the larger the animal, the louder the noise. But if they see each other as a fair match, then what we'll see is both males rearing up high, and they'll take huge chunks out of each other's necks.
I saw these two elephant seals rise up and begin challenging each other. And it was just fabulous. It was clearly deadly serious. In the middle of the whole thing, you have these penguins strolling on by and checking it out. Finally, seeing the challenger lose and begin to back away. Backing away, he never turned his head. He was watching very carefully to make sure that he was still safe. And I just can't believe I actually got to see that entire challenge and fight. It was just like landing in the middle of some nature video that I never thought I would ever see. It was just stunning, absolutely stunning.
Luckily enough, they've got a lot of protective blubber around this neck area, so usually the wounds are fairly superficial, but it can be a very bloody affair.
I think the thing that draws me to South Georgia is the wildlife. When you first come ashore, there's no way to make sense of the chaos. There's so much animal life around you. Just the spectacle of how much is here, the cacophony, the noise, the king penguins calling, the thousands of elephant seals on the beach. The abundance is over the top. And every one of these animals has an agenda. Every one of them is trying to find a mate. Every one of them is trying to reproduce. Every one of them is trying to bring a pup or a chick into the world. And they are trying to eke out their living. So, an amazing time to be in South Georgia.
South Georgia is a pretty wonderful place. As you can see by the several thousand king penguins, this is sort of a mecca of wildlife. And all of this biodiversity wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the surrounding ocean, the nutrients, the upwelling. We come to South Georgia to see these creatures on land. And we have to keep in mind that they're only here for a short time. These are marine animals. From the seals to the penguins, all of them are deriving food and nutrients from the water, not only surrounding this island, but far out into the Southern Ocean. So there is a deep connection from what the ocean brings to allow for what we see here on land. Our journey began in the Falkland Islands, where we accomplished 4 different dives. But now we're in South Georgia, and the colors and the diversity that we saw in the Falkland Islands with the small snails, the painted shrimp, and everything else in the invertebrate kingdom that we enjoyed, that doesn't exist as much here in South Georgia. It's colder here, it's harsher here. So what does live down in the water column has to struggle to be what it is, and has done so for millions of years. This is a place that is dominated by kelp. Kelp is not only a home for these creatures, but it's actually a main food source for them as well. You have Macrocystis, also known as giant kelp, the same exact species that grows off the coast of California. And that's vertical in the water. But really, in South Georgia, the entire bottom is also covered in kelp. This is habitat and food for so many of the small creatures that choose to live amongst the kelp. These creatures, some of them are very strange, adapted perfectly to their environment. I think largely that our imaginations are limited when we consider what's happening underwater. To be able to explore these waters is such a wonder. It's something that is unique to Lindblad expeditions, and it's really quite intense to be diving in such temperatures, and that's because it's dangerous and we are far away from help, but it's absolutely worth it for what you find. So we bring specialized folk like myself and Maya on board and able to explore these places and bring all of this life back to the surface to not only educate, but to inspire to protect these places.
We're here today in beautiful Stromness Valley. This is the last 1.5 miles of the Shackleton hike. Some of our group started in Fortuna Bay this morning. They did the first 3.5 miles. The 3 men had just made a 36-hour journey across this island in order to save the men they'd left behind at King Hawken Bay, where they had come ashore in South Georgia, and back at Elephant Island, where they had started their open boat crossing to South Georgia. And now we're at the famous Shackleton waterfall, where Shackleton, Worsley, and Crean made their final descent into the valley to end the epic crossing of South Georgia in 1916. Just above this waterfall, Worsley, Shackleton, and Crean had heard the 6:30 steam whistle of the Stromness whaling station, which awakened the whalers for their day, and they knew that they were safe. They shook hands and made their way to the final obstacle, which was this waterfall. Frozen, difficult, and with no other way down, they rappelled it and safely made it. Today, our conditions couldn't be better for the crossing and for our final walk to Stromness whaling station. But those three men in their epic journey, we must remember that it was nearly midwinter, and they were often walking up to their knees in snow after a harrowing journey crossing in an open boat. Quite an incredible accomplishment. But we are lucky enough to end our beautiful morning with lunch back on the National Geographic Explorer.
So the whalers came to South Georgia around 1904. In the 60-year history of this station, Grytviken, 50,000 whales were processed. While throughout the other stations, of which there were 6, 175,000 whales were processed in the history of whaling around South Georgia. A few hundred whalers operated out of this facility, while island-wide there were over 1,000 whalers. Along the shoreline, we can see a number of the old whale catcher boats that they used to go out and harpoon the whales with and then drag them back to the station. From 1904 to 1965, South Georgia was the most important whaling location in the world. Not only are we here to visit this incredible site, but also to visit the grave of the boss. Sir Ernest Shackleton passed through this area 3 times on 3 expeditions and was later buried here after he suffered a massive heart attack in January of 1922 aboard the ship the Quest. Shackleton ended up going to Uruguay on a little side trip because they could not communicate with his wife, and she insisted that he be brought back here. And he was returned here eventually, and this is where he lays. So the boss was quite a man and quite an example of leadership. So here we are to celebrate and toast this great man, the boss.
To Shackleton.
Now it's customary that we drink some of this and pour it on his grave, as he would be happier that way. He's a well-soiled soul. To the boss. Mm-hmm.
So this afternoon we've just come into Drygalski Fjord on the southeastern end of South Georgia. Come in to have a look at the glacier at the end of the fjord, and it's the first close-up experience we've had with a glacier during the voyage. And Drygalski Fjord's an ideal place for heading off to the Antarctic, where we're going to experience a lot more ice, icebergs, and certainly much larger glaciers. So this is just a nice closure for South Georgia and makes an ideal departure point for heading off to the Antarctic.
This morning we've come to Point Wild. Point Wild is the place where Shackleton and his men finally made it to after camping on the sea ice for many months. Shackleton sent out Frank Wild, his second in command, to look for a better camp, and this is what he found. They came, they relocated, they set up camp. It was winter, there would be no whalers in the area, and so Shackleton makes the decision to take the James Caird to South Georgia. While the Falklands are closer, he knew with the prevailing wind that he would never make it to the Falklands, and so he chose the longer route across the Southern Ocean and made it to South Georgia. Meanwhile, his men on Elephant Island lived underneath their overturned lifeboats, hand to mouth, catching whatever they could find, whatever penguin, whatever seal, but it was pretty rough going. After 4 attempts, Shackleton finally made it to Elephant Island, and as the men started emerging from the overturned lifeboats, he started counting. All 22 of them were there. It must have been quite a moment for Shackleton to see that they had all survived those 4 months here on Elephant Island. This is one of the brush-tailed penguins, the chin strap. And these guys were survival food for the 22 men who were stuck here. There were a few penguins hanging around when they first arrived, but then, winter came and the penguins largely disappeared. So they were catching a penguin or two here and there. It was pretty tough times for them, hand to mouth. Penguins are 80% feather, 20% fat for insulation, a lot of fluff. So these guys are related to gentoos and adelies. And those are kind of the 3 dominant species we'll be seeing. Quite a backdrop back there. That's right.
This afternoon we're having tea time in the laundry room. We want to show the guests where their laundry is made and also to have tea in a different way. Enjoy!
What an incredible morning we're having. We've been cruising along the ice edge, seeing emperor penguins, leopard seals, sculpted icebergs,
I've been awestruck almost all day with the immensity of this beautiful place. And the emperors are fantastic to watch. I love them sliding, I love them walking. Just to revel in the gorgeousness of this planet. So I'm very grateful today.
And we parked the ship along the ice edge, and we're now out walking on the ice, literally walking on water. And we have both Adelie and emperor penguins coming up to us. We can lay down on the ice, make pictures, put the ship in the background.
We've been really lucky because it's rare to see the emperors here. They usually breed far more inland. Emperor penguins are the largest penguin species. They can be up to 19 centimeters or 1 meter tall, and they can weigh up to 45 kilograms.
That was an emperor penguin, not just any penguin. That is the penguin that I never thought I'd ever see. I dreamed for ages of seeing an emperor penguin. I was quite happy settling for a king penguin. So to be able to be that close to an animal like that is really cool. Not only to stand there, but also he did his bugling there. And that was total magic. That's all I can say.
I've been coming to the Antarctic for 20 years, and this is the first time that I've been out on the ice with the emperor penguins. And it's like the holy grail bird. It is the one that everyone wants to get. And what a great way to start being in the true Antarctic with the emblematic species, the emperor penguin, the biggest of them all down here. It's just an incredible day. And we're gonna go back to the ship, have lunch, and we're gonna put on skis and snowshoes and go exploring out towards the iceberg.
How are you doing?
Good.
You like this?
Skiing.
Yeah.
Antarctica is famous as a land of ice, and indeed most of it is covered with snow and ice. On the continent itself there's a huge ice cap which gradually drains away into the ocean, providing icebergs and meltwater. But surrounding the continent there is also fast ice, and that's frozen sea, and that provides a richness of life underneath, but also a place of rest and refuge for seabirds, penguins and seals. So the ice is intimately part of the system. In fact, it's what makes the system what it is. Ice is really important to the way the climate system on the planet works. It bounces a lot of the sun's energy straight back out to space. So in this way, it's absolutely critical to the overall energy balance and heat balance of the Earth. Without the ice, the world will be a very different place. One of the things that grips you about ice is that it isn't all the same. There's a huge range of colours in ice. It doesn't matter how many icebergs you've seen, how many ice floes you've stood on. One never tires of looking at ice. Every time you look at it, it's different, and it never loses its wonder.
Here at Brown Bluff this morning, we can see our first Adelie penguin colony, and we see the adults going to sea and coming back from sea. All the 3 species of brush-tailed penguins are in the nesting phase right now, and we can see them on their nest incubating the eggs. So we've been seeing penguins pretty much everywhere, and it's easy to think of these birds as cute, helpless and clumsy, and not really well adapted to be on land. But really, they survive in this tough environment, and it's pretty incredible. So every year they go through this breeding cycle. They come back on shore. They need to find a partner to breed. They need to feed themselves. They need to take care of the egg. Later on, they need to feed the chicks. They need to face all the predators they have at sea. And they do all of this in this really harsh, inhospitable environment. And they manage to survive because they are perfectly adapted to the Antarctic. While we humans wouldn't last 3 days in those conditions. And these birds are so determined about everything that they do. They don't let rocks or ice or far distances stand in their way to take care of their chicks. So while we should admire them and enjoy their company, we should not forget how hardy and tough those birds really are.
All of the ice that we're seeing out here floating around has come from the face of those glaciers that we were looking at earlier. But you can see that it's been reasonably calm for the last while because it's all packed in together. And that gives us the chance to take in not only the smaller bits of ice, but also these really nice, lovely big icebergs and their different colors and shapes. You can see different textures in them. So one thing you can see is all these little sort of stripes and bubbles where there's air in there. Remember that the snow falls year after year after year up in the mountains and it gets compressed over time. And as it gets compressed, the air pockets get compressed out. The other thing that you can see is how the water moving past it has sculpted the texture. Sometimes we'll see a whole iceberg that has flipped over and the surface that used to be underwater is now exposed. It can be stunning. The water here is so clear right now, and so we have incredible views. not just of the ice, but of the color it looks under the water too. And to have this much ice around, you've come to an amazing place for sure.
We're just going to sit here for a couple hours if that's all right.
As long as you're not going close to that ice, you're all good.
This morning in Antarctica, we are just near the Gerlache Strait, and we are enjoying awesome views of humpback whales all around the ship. These are some of the large baleen whales, some of the most common that we find down here in Antarctica, and they are here feeding. There's so much food in these rich, productive, cold waters that it's really indifferent to us. It's not disturbed by our presence, and we can just watch them as they feed around us at the surface. Being one of these large baleen whales, this was a species that, along with many other species down here in the Southern Ocean, was really, really heavily hunted, almost to near extinction. But also, this is an example of a species that, in the years following whaling, has actually made a really impressive comeback. So a great example of what marine species are capable of doing if we give them a chance to recover. And we got even luckier and had amazing sightings of Antarctic killer whales. Down here in the Southern Ocean, there are 5 ecotypes. These are essentially different groups doing different things. They're characterized not only in looking physically different, but also in what they're feeding on. Today, these are specifically type B killer whales. They're characterized by having a little bit more of a grayish tinge to them from having a film of diatoms that covers their skin. And they also have what's known as a dorsal cape, and that is a line specifically that runs from the front of their eye patch down to their saddle patch that's under their dorsal fin. The big type B killer whales, these are known to specialize on being pack ice killer whales feeding on seals, whereas the little Bs are known to feed on fish as well as penguins. But what we know about these animals is they're highly intelligent, cooperative hunters, and they pass on information from generation to generation. So what they're doing is passing on information on how to best hone those hunting tactics.
So we're here at Bruce Island, and it's our first penguin colony on snow still, mostly Gentoos. And those guys still need to walk through the snow to get to the colony and back to the water. And they use penguin highways. So what that means is that penguin after penguin after penguin uses the same path. So they don't have to go through the deep snow every time. And this eventually creates a penguin highway. By the end of the season, those highways will look like deep trenches winding down the hill, connecting the colony and the shore where they go to forage. And when a penguin finds him or herself off a highway, then another very efficient way to travel over the fresh snow is to drop to the ground and toboggan. And penguins exhibit these kind of behaviors because conserving energy is really important in these harsh environments.
It's our last morning in Antarctica, and this morning we are going to visit Port Lockroy behind me, an old British research station. At Port Lockroy we get a good look into the past, where we can see how the researchers worked way back and how they lived in the 1950s. And this is also our third time for an ice walk, which is very unusual on these trips. Just a perfect way to end our fantastic expedition in Antarctica.
"21 days on our expedition from the Falklands to South Georgia and then to the Antarctic. It's been an amazing experience. We've seen all types of weather. We've had some incredible sightings, and I think one of the most outstanding days was our ice walk, and we experienced emperor penguins coming and going from the ice edge. In 16 years of being down here and seeing the Antarctic all through the season, I've never had a day where we've had the emperor penguins like we had. It was truly magical. It's been a fantastic voyage. We've all really enjoyed sharing it with you, and we wish you safe and onward travels, and we hope to see you on a National Geographic and Lindblad expedition somewhere else in the world.
We are ready for the polar plunge, so that we can see how many guests are ready to prove their insanity.
And the temperature of the water is -1 degree Celsius.
It's a lovely day for a swim.
Recovery right there.